What is up, YouTube? Today we're going back to the basics. We're going to put ourselves in the shoes of fighting game beginners and see what it's like for them as they try to learn fighting games for the first time. What am I talking about? I'm talking about this video from Polygon titled How to Get Started with Fighting Games and Have a Nice Time. It's pretty popular, 250k views, you know, a little bit more than I normally get. And a lot of people have been saying to check it out. So today we're going to react to it, give my 2 cents on how it's like to be a fighting game beginner, since I at one time, you know, you might not believe it, but I was a beginner back in the day, back in Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition. Before we get into the video, if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that red button down below and let's get into it.
For a long time, I'd look at fighting games and I'd say, that looks so cool, but I don't think it's for me. I had done some casual button mashing,
That's so funny edit.
but I never dove into the deeper mechanics. When I saw the gulf between what I was able to do,
I think everyone going into fighting games for their first time just thinks that it looks really cool, right?
A few years ago, I decided to try.
That's how I was.
Was it worth it? Yes. I can tell you without exaggeration that fighting games have brought me more joy than anything else I've put my gaming hours into.
Okay.
It's a distinct category of enjoyment.
Better than Fortnite?
Constructed from the greatest pleasures.
Better than Breath of the Wild?
Joy of hitting
and
buttons
Tetris?
Cool shit happened. The slow burn tension of outmaneuvering.
What is that, StarCraft?
Strategy game. The Dark Souls satisfaction of studying a boss's patterns and exploiting their weaknesses. It's meditative, it's rhythmic, it's sports. Ooh. It's therapeutic.
The editing's going crazy on this.
It's the closest you're ever
Okay,
gonna come
Punko with his shirt off.
Here's my 10-step guide for getting into fighting games.
Okay, 10 steps.
Step 1. Decide you want to do it.
Yep, that's pretty important.
This one's kind of obvious, but it's also essential. Your desire to get into fighting games is going to be the thing that fuels you through the hard stuff. If you're
and I feel like there's different levels of deciding you want to do it. There's the first level of like you want to learn how to do a little bit. You want to learn how to do some combos just to beat your friend.
Really exciting to see.
But then there's the deeper level, like where you want to when you're locals, when they beat the competitive people.
It's like an unstoppable.
And then it just keeps growing from there.
Plan them right now. Thank you.
It's kind of addicting.
Whose idea was it to make his pubes his legs?
Bruh, what?
There will be a lot of in-jokes and terminology you don't understand, but you'll pick it up soon enough through context clues. And if you need a helping hand, check out the infill.net fighting game glossary. They have
I'll link this glossary in the description because it's very useful. And I actually have a command for it on my stream. People were passing that around back in the day when that first came out.
And the definitive answer,
you just exclamation point glossary and then you put in the term.
So serious about this. You need to follow your heart. Look at gameplay trailers, watch some big matches. Whichever game makes you feel the spark is the one that you should chase. That spark will be what fuels you when things get hard.
Yeah, for me it was, you know, obviously Street Fighter.
So for me,
that's really the first fighting game I ever kind of saw. And I didn't even like see a match. I just saw it on Steam. It said Arcade Edition. If it didn't say Arcade Edition, I'm not sure I would have been interested, to be honest.
I understood that King.
I was like, dang, I get to play a game that's in the arcade? That's pretty sick. And then I started looking up matches, and I feel like that's kind of how you gotta start. You gotta like build your motivation by watching content.
Because of the old COVID, you're mostly going to be playing online, and not all games have great net play. In games that use delay-based netcode, response times can be sluggish. The good news is
that's true.
If you're new, you probably won't know what you're missing out on until you taste that crisp offline stuff. If you know that you're mostly going to be playing online, consider choosing a game with rollback netcode. Rollback is an ingenious net play solution that pretty much eliminates the sluggishness inherent to
like I think back to playing online in Street Fighter 4, it was very weird having a delay based game. You just have matches that were like literally underwater. Alright, this is about controllers.
What do I need to start playing?
Probably.
And the good news is if you play other types of games, you're good to go. You need a console or a PC and a controller, and that's it.
That's
also
true.
A good internet connection. More on that later. You might think you need a big fancy fight stick, but there's really no direct correlation between performance and equipment. Lots of the best players.
Yeah, I mean these days keyboards are more optimal than fight sticks. People have decided. And I agree. Like pads are better than fight sticks
If you
too.
have the resources and the inclination, fight sticks
The only reason to play on fight stick is because it's cool.
tactile and hefty, and they make
Like I started learning on a fight stick because everyone else was using it, so I thought it was like optimal.
most of the sticks
But it's also just cool to be playing on, you know.
meaning the joystick moves around in a square frame. It makes it easy to lock in important fighting game positions like down.
Is he gonna go over Octogate? I played on Octogate.
Another less common configuration is bat top K lever.
What
These
the
ones
heck?
don't have a gate, and they use a rubber grommet to return to the
What?
neutral position. The result is that they're a bit spongier, and you got to be more precise with your inputs. Unless you're planning to go all in on
That
Tekken,
seems weird. I wouldn't want to play on that.
Finally, hitbox style controllers replace the joystick with more.
But yeah, if you want to play a fight stick
they take some getting used to,
and
but they
you
have
also think that
precise
square gate is
inputs.
weird, you should try a Octogate because there's 8
Breaking on the fight
directions
stick can stress
and an
out
Octogate has 8 gates, one for each direction. I feel like it makes a lot of sense, but people don't agree with me for some reason. What is gear gate?
Step 4.
Did he explain that? Is that just like thinking you don't have the gear? Because I actually played on keyboard for a whole year until I started playing Street Fighter 4 in 2013. I played with my friend at school at lunch every day on the same keyboard, which had some problems because apparently if you hit too many buttons on a laptop keyboard, they lock buttons out. You can only press so many buttons. So if you just mash the whole keyboard, then the other person can't hit their buttons. But yeah, I didn't switch to an arcade stick until after a year of playing on a keyboard.
But more importantly, it'll just be slow.
Oh yeah, you gotta have an Ethernet cable. If it's hard to have a whole wire to your router, there's a thing called power line adapter. I think your mileage can vary. I think it depends how the electrical circuits in your home work, but basically it translates like an Ethernet connection to like your electricity current. But I live in an apartment by myself. I just run the Ethernet cable all the way to the router.
So, who are some good characters for new fighting game players? The answer, regardless of the game, is whoever you think looks cool. Once again, your enthusiasm is
That's true.
emotional wealth.
And in Street Fighter 4, I thought Ryu looked cool because Daigo played him.
And you don't always have to pick a
So I played Daigo until
For
2017
example, when I started Tekken 7, I
when
played
Ryu
King
got nerfed in
because
Street
I
Fighter
liked that
5.
he's got some complicated inputs, and as a grappler, he approaches combat differently from most of the roster.
Bro, how many moves is that?
Like
I knew there were a lot of moves in Tekken,
because he's kind of the
but
real
like,
in that game.
isn't that a little bit too many?
I thought that having a high tier character who exemplified the fundamentals of that series would help me learn. So I tried for a while, and then I fell off.
Yeah, I think that's a misconception I had, kind of too.
A few months later,
I think I
came
played
back
Ryu
and I
for
tried
way
the
too
character
long.
who I really wanted to play all along, and it all clicked. I loved looking at my little guy.
I think I learned a lot more by playing Colleen.
Booty drop. And I loved
In terms of
busting.
neutral, in
So I
terms
was
of like,
motivated to play and
well,
learn.
mostly neutral, I
Don't let
guess.
Tier lists or meta discussions dissuade you early on. Pick who you think looks cool. I literally cannot say this enough.
Step 6. Learn how to play.
Once you've selected your little guy, hop into
And you
Tekken
can like
start
switch between
see what they
characters, you
do.
know.
Some games
You
like
can
Little
play
Big
multiple
Try
characters.
Combat have decent
You don't have to
tutorials
stick with
explaining
one
fighting
character.
fundamentals.
Although you should like
Any
a
fighting
decent
game
amount,
also have a full
but you can dabble, you know.
menu. If you like what you're feeling, hop onto YouTube and search for some character guides. This is a really cool thing about fighting games. They are complicated. There are hurdles to overcome.
Yeah, I feel like these days there's no shortage of YouTube tutorials for new games. Like you can at least learn the basics, and the basics are enough for you to start winning matches and then start developing your own strategies.
When you watch a guide, don't expect to internalize everything all at once. That's a ton of information, and it's just not realistic.
Like what you need to get started is just a little bit of information to get you to like start playing the game. Then you go into ranked, you start playing the game, you're like, oh, your opponent did this one thing, how do I beat it?
In terms of written
And then you
resources,
keep
it's gonna
learning.
depend
You
on
might not know how to beat it.
Guilty Gear and other
You look up
games
how to do it.
guides on
You look at
just
some high level gameplay.
Don't worry about optimizing yet. You need to develop your muscle memory to the point where you can hit your combos at all.
Yeah, being optimal isn't too important.
I got on Twitter and
You just need a combo
Teken's most basic,
for situations.
unoptimized combo. I did it.
Like you don't need the best DP punish, you need a DP
Did
punish.
what? This will be
You don't need the best like punish on a sweep. You just need to like something.
Things that to outsiders appear inconsequential,
And it's very easy to replace your non-optimal punish with one, like an optimal
but
one.
nailing combos only accounts for a tiny percentage of what goes into playing a match. And the only way to start figuring that out is to fight.
Step 7. Fight, a human.
Sitting here on this screen for the first time can be scary. I mean, maybe not for you, maybe you're some sort of real fucking cool guy. But for me, not knowing what would happen when I hit that matchmake button was nerve-wracking. Another real...
Yeah, I don't think I was scared at all. I don't know if there's something wrong with me.
Combos and forget to block.
What I did was I saw a gamer B got second at Evo. I picked Adon and I just started mashing.
Despite advances in fighting game AI, the CPU won't string those moves together like a human opponent, and fighting a robot is just not as fun. So
yeah, I feel like theoretically, if you look at everything, you can just learn it without playing people. But in reality, you just play people to learn everything.
Then attempts to match you against opponents of the same.
Like you see what,
usually there's some sort of meta progression.
What an Akuma player is doing, you're like, ah, I see what's going on. They got a cheap V trigger.
The obvious
There's a super that command grabs you. That's not very fair.
So you'll actually have a chance of winning.
You play against Luke. Oh, this guy has a full screen fireball.
The con is that even when you're fighting
V trigger's unreactable.
That sense that
wait, he does a little bit too much damage.
Getting bumped down a level after a losing streak.
And you can learn that very fast just by playing.
Shit, but it's actually fine. The other option is unranked. Here, the matchmaking will just stick you with another player, any other player. Or you'll meet up in some sort of virtual art.
I feel like this makes sense.
Unlike ranked play, there's no digital clout on the line.
Kind
so
of.
People are much more likely to play long sets. That's a
but I would recommend just playing ranked always.
There's always an adjustment period between opponents. Pro players have the knowledge and experience.
Because that's where people are gonna like be playing like slightly more seriously.
Let's say your opponent is using a technique that keeps blowing you up. You might not have time to run.
And your rank points really don't matter.
The most obvious downside to unranked matchmaking is that you might get paired up with somebody who is way better than you. But that's not really a
I think he's talking about a different game because that's not how it works in Street Fighter. I think he's talking about like Battle Lounge type stuff.
You learn which of your reliable strategies.
I think playing Battle Lounge is really good.
And you get to see the strength of good fundamentals.
Because then people will start exposing you if you have bad habits.
The power of not pressing.
In the first of two, someone might not realize what your bad habits are.
I fight opponents who felt like absolute brick walls. They would just block punish and whiff punish. Every loss was the result of me over. And
you might not be able to figure out how to beat something your opponent is doing in, you know, the first of two.
Struggle.
At the end of a fighting game match, you win or you lose. There's no teammates to blame for not pulling their weight. There's no XP meter sliding up to reward you for your participation. You will beyond a shadow.
There is a XP meter though, right?
Self-doubt and
in Street Fighter? I don't really look at it ever, and you get fight money too. Maybe you don't get fight money if you lose. I think it's only plus 50 if you win.
Separate your self-worth from your performance.
But yeah, you definitely,
like saying, stop being
that's not going to console you after a loss.
You are not your win-loss ratio. Getting demoted doesn't mean you suck as a person, even if it feels that way. And if you start feeling that way,
yeah, it's easy to say this, but
take a damn break.
You know,
taking a break doesn't just let you.
Whenever, like, it's the same thing with playing in a tournament. You go into a tournament, you practice so hard, you lose immediately. You're just like, man, I'm worthless, and then you just gotta take some time to get your head out of the gutter.
Most fighting games keep a log of your most recent matches with the ability to play them back. You should take advantage of that. Seeing yourself play can help you recognize
that was a good anti-air.
You want to correct. It can also help you appreciate what you do well and what you want to do more of.
Yeah, I think looking at replays is underrated. People will want to just keep playing, but it takes just as long to like watch one replay as to play one game.
The fighting game community is the name of the
and I think it's more valuable
There are
like
hundreds
in
of
small
thousands.
doses.
Do some
Like obviously you should be playing, but
until you find a place that
you
feels
gotta mix in some analyzing, otherwise you're gonna start developing bad habits. It's gonna be hard to like realize what you could be doing better.
For me, knowing who's on the other side of the connection completely obliterates the frustration and antagonism that I can feel playing against random online opponents. Partially because it's just more humanizing.
Yeah, it's fun playing with friends.
But also because you can ask questions in chat. If you're in a good community,
yeah, you can ask like how minus or plus a move is,
decided that they
how to beat a setup.
Games have signed an unspoken contract with
you can just ask them what you're doing wrong. They might like have some advice for you.
Makes you stronger. So a good sparring partner will explain exactly how and why they're winning.
But not everyone will be able to explain why they're beating you. You know, you can't expect everyone to be a good teacher.
Through your community or just by being online, you might come across some online tournaments, and you should sign up for them. Tournaments
I
are
agree.
Really cool. They offer you
There's a lot of them, and people will just be like sitting in ranked playing, but playing in a tournament is much more efficient if you're trying to actually improve.
Set aside the helpful hints and just going all out, seeing who will win. If you're used to mostly playing friendlies, it's fun to try out a different vibe. The other
playing in a tournament is also just different because you're gonna have nerves. Like you might have nerves playing ranked, but your nerves are gonna be way higher playing in a tournament.
Once you've played under pressure, you'll be better in casual settings. Random matchmaking doesn't get my heart rate up like it used to. Finally, a lot of tournaments are streamed on Twitch, which means you might get a chance to rewatch the VOD and hear someone commentate your match.
Yeah, it's so cool, like when you do something sick and you're like, whoa, this commentator that I watched, they reacted to it, you know?
That can be an incredible learning tool.
They've proven they're pretty good at fighting out.
I feel like that's pretty cool when you're a new player.
Already, Doublemint now back thrown into the corner. Again, huge life deficit, but the other way around. Gets hit by the stomps. No, but drops it at the target combo.
Step 10. There is no end.
One of the many wonderful and intimidating things about fighting games is that there's no prescribed end goal for your participation. There's no final boss or end game.
I mean, there kind of is. We gotta win Evo.
In the world is only the best
or Capcom Cup.
Them. No matter where you are in your journey, in some sense, you're still.
But yeah, he's right.
That means you won't always know the next step forward, but it also means you're never falling behind. And as long as you're on that path, learning and having fun.
Yeah, you just gotta keep improving. That's facts. Yeah, I think I agree with like, you know, all of his points in the video. Definitely some good insight into how to get started with fighting games. For me, I had a friend in high school that I just played a lot with, and then my motivation just kept kind of rising. Like I went from wanting to beat my friend to wanting to like do good at locals, and then I went to my first major. I went to Defend the North in 2016, and I was like, whoa, I'm seeing all these players that I've only seen on Twitch before, and I played with them, and I'm like, whoa, I can get some games on these guys. And you know, you just keep improving and keep gaining motivation to improve. And for me, it just has never ended, and somehow I'm still doing this almost 10 years later. In like 4 months it's gonna be 10 years that I've been playing Street Fighter. And I think nowadays it's even easier to get into fighting games than it was back then, because there's more people streaming on Twitch, there's more YouTube tutorials, there's more content just overall. If you're a new player, I would say like just start playing and go like watch some content to keep yourself motivated. Go to some events, that's gonna get your motivation up as well. And just enjoy the fighting game community, because it's pretty cool. That's gonna be the end of the video. Leave a like and a comment down below if you enjoyed it. Leave a subscribe, because 70% of you are not subscribed to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.